Hello and welcome to Brand X Review's 13th annual Halloween special. For this one we're opening up by talking about the two films 28 Days Later, released in 2002, and 28 Weeks Later, released in 2007. Now we'll be talking about the more recent film in tomorrow's video, 28 Years Later, but for this one it's kind of more of a recap. So, quick summary of the films. These are zombie genre films, although they're not typical zombies. They're actually rage-infected. The film is about an outbreak of something that has been worked on in a lab where pretty much pure rage has been put into a virus form and injected into monkeys. These monkeys are... well, a rescue attempt is made with the monkeys in the lab, but the virus along with that breaks out. And then you don't see exactly what happens immediately after. It cuts to 28 days later, and a guy wakes up in a coma in the aftermath of the outbreak, wanders around London wondering what the hell's going on, and then it soon becomes apparent what's happened. The rest of the film plays out from there. We're going to talk a bit about that today. We're going to talk about the sequel as well, which is set 28 weeks later and is about resettlement in London after the virus has died down, and you can imagine how that goes. So yeah, that's pretty much it. For this one I have my co-reviewer, The Core, so we're going to talk about these well-loved films. Hello and welcome to Brand X Reviews. Welcome to this year's 2025 Halloween special, the 13th annual Halloween special. And today we have The Core.
Word to your buff.
Yeah, so that was an alternate intro from The Core. So yeah, basically this year we've got a bit of a theme going, but it's not all the way through the series. Do you want to tell us what you wanted to kind of have as a bit of a theme, Core?
Yeah, I mean, basics we do like action movies. I think it's one of the things we kind of focus on. So this year we thought, like, maybe like where that crosses over with horror, for like Halloween. Action movies that are also horror movies. Like, we're not really talking about it, but like a good example would be like Aliens, for example. Horror film, but it's also an action film.
Yeah, good example. And today what we're doing is, and tomorrow, today we're doing a recap of 28 Days and Weeks Later. You could kind of say the second one is a bit of an action film more than a horror. Bit of a stretch, but whatever. And then tomorrow we're going to be talking about 28 Years Later and do a review. I did a bit of a video when it came out originally, but the Core has watched that, so he wants to have some things to say. So for this one, we're going to do a recap of 28 Days and Years Later. So... bit of a classic, isn't it, that first film? It was even feeling in recent years to be like a bit of a almost forgotten about classic. It was difficult to get hold of a physical copy. It had been out of print for a while. It wasn't a film that a lot of people talked about much.
When did it come out originally?
2002. And it's a film I saw fairly early on. I remember watching it, and I'd seen it a couple of times, and I think maybe the second or third time I watched it, the news came out that Cillian Murphy was going to be in the next Batman film, as in Batman Begins. So this would have been about 2003 when I first saw it. It was kind of a big do on home video at the time. It was quite a popular one. A lot of people liked it. Enough so that it got a sequel, but we'll get into that. So over the years, in terms of physical media, it got a Blu-ray upgrade, in inverted commas upgrade. The film was shot in very sort of low definition, intentionally for the look of the film. So to put it out on a Blu-ray, a lot of people, I remember when it came out, were complaining at the poor quality of the Blu-ray. It's like, well, that's kind of the point. You're getting what the film is. You can't really enhance it when it was made to look that way. You wouldn't want it to look crisp because you'd be taking away from the intention of the movie. That was just Danny Boyle's.
Yeah, well, they're going for like it, almost like it was recorded on like a. It it's not exactly like a found footage or anything, but it's sort of like almost
VHS.
yeah, kind of quality, like
Yeah.
deliberately, like for that kind of grittiness.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't filmed on VHS, but yeah, it was done with that kind of low definition. And I know we're going to get into talking about 28 years later tomorrow, but it's worth saying now while we're talking about the original one. A lot of people criticise the new one, saying that it had a lot of weird camera angles and things that were jarring. Well, there's quite a bit of that in the original, to be fair. There's quite a few shots in there where you'll have basically like two scenes that are kind of merged together on screen, and then the camera kind of pans into the other. So, like on the bottom side of the screen, you can see Jim, that's Cillian Murphy's character's like face while he's kind of half asleep, and then sort of spliced in with that, you've got like a shot of like the streets of London. Just two completely different like shots there, and then it kind of merges, like it moves into a different one. So there's a little bit of that in the first one. Obviously, they went a bit heavier in the new one, but it was something that they did. Obviously, the look of the film was a big deal. So that's worth bearing in mind. But yeah, it kind of reinvented things with the zombie genre a little bit. Maybe it didn't get as much credit for it until fairly recently, when a lot of people have been going back and like reassessing it. But kind of like what we're doing here, to be fair. Fast moving zombies.
Yeah, I was going to say like the fast zombies. Definitely, like I think this kind of got its start here. I'd also say like the kind of person wandering around the apocalypse and the abandoned streets and stuff. I think that's also very iconic of this film. Like,
Yeah.
After he just wakes up and he's like wandering around London.
Yeah, exactly. So it's not about necessarily what happens in that scene. It's just the visuals of that. Yeah, that's a good example, because it's so much so that was pretty much on the poster, just him kind of walking around the streets of London while everything's derelict, and that's as chilling as anything else you'll see, whether or not it's like zombies like chasing people and killing them. Just the kind of slow burn that you get with this film, especially from the beginning onwards, is something that, there's something to be said about that. But yeah, fast moving zombies, that was something obviously that then got taken further with the Zack Snyder remake of Dawn of the Dead in 2004. So that was like 2 years later.
I'd also say the Walking Dead. I get the name right. Because the first episode, I don't know, like, I can't remember from the comic, like, whether it's kind of the same in that. But certainly where it starts out, like, he wakes up in a hospital and he's, like, wandering around, like, the abandoned hospital and the streets and stuff. Like, it is kind of like, it's not like a rip-off of 28 Days Later, but there's a very similar kind of feel to it.
Yeah, so there's certain horror films that come out like that, and then, like you say, it's not a rip-off. It's like, you could say all these gory films that we started to see coming out in the sort of late, early 2000s, so like 2007, 8, 9, like Hostel and so on. You could really kind of say that the film Saw was the one that started the ball rolling with that, and then you started to get a lot of those kind of films. You could definitely say that about 28 years later. I mean, there might be other examples, like earlier examples, but that was the one that really kind of like struck. So like
yeah,
you
like I say, I can't even remember if like the original Walking Dead comic had that, or if that came out before or after. Like, it did its own things though. It's like neither was ripping off the other ones. So.
Yeah. And we saw it with like World War Z. I know it was a little while later, it was like a decade later in 2013, but that had like fast moving zombies. There's plenty of other examples. But it's one of those things quite interesting.
Certainly when it comes to like zombies, because like people who like zombie games and like zombie media, like the fast zombie is like a specific like type of zombie now. Like the Romero ones, rather than just being like the standard zombies like they used to be, are now like they're shamblers. Whereas you got the rage zombies and the fast zombies, and they're kind of like different types. And certainly whenever they talk about the fast zombies or the rage zombies, they're usually talking about 28. Whatever's later, like days, weeks, years.
Yeah.
We skipped months.
Yeah, so it's a good example that you bring up George Romero, because obviously he was one that kind of set the stage for like zombie movies in Night of the Living Dead back in 67, was it, or 68? So a lot of people kind of copied that afterwards. Not that they copied it, it was just that was kind of a thing, like a genre that was created. There were certain rules that were written there. And obviously a lot of the time those rules are broken, quite famously so in films like Return of the Living Dead, which was kind of like a side sequel to Night of the Living Dead in a kind of weird way. But yeah, what else is it to say? I mean, the cast in 28 Days Later is for the most part good. But the young girl in it, she's called Hannah in the film, probably one of the worst child actors I've ever seen in a film. I get it, she's supposed to be kind of traumatized though. So you could put it down to that, to be fair. The character's supposed to be traumatized.
Yeah, it can also be difficult with kids because I know there's a lot of like Screen Actor Guild rules and stuff, like how long they can be on like camera and stuff. You can't always like reshoot scenes because you don't have them anymore that day.
Yeah. It's just she's got all of the energy of a Chris Stuckman review. So,
Yes.
But funny anyway. But the rest of the cast is really... Is it Brendan Gleeson? He's the dad. He's like an Irish actor, although he's not Irish in the film. But he's really good. He plays a kind of father character. And then there's Jim. And he's played by Cillian Murphy, who this was one of his very first like big roles. I know he's talked about when he got cast in this movie, and that was a big deal for him. And then obviously went on to
I mean, I really liked it when it was in 28 Years Later, when he's like the really skinny zombie.
Yeah, we'll get to that tomorrow.
Yes.
So yeah, no. And then the I can never remember her name. She plays Moneypenny. Naomi Harris, that's it. This was an early one of hers, and she's been consistently a good actress with quite a bit of range as well, because in this one she's quite a sort of fiery person. I've seen her play other roles where she's like, quite laid back and so on, and quite methodical and that. But in this, she's kind of a bit frenzied, but then and a bit ruthless. But she kind of finds her humanity in this film, because that's the whole point of this, is that you realise that if somebody that you know has been bitten, you can't afford to mess around. You can't afford to be like humane or sentimental towards them. You've got to kill them straight away, otherwise they will kill you. And she makes that point about she would kill Jim in a heartbeat. But then it gets to the point where... Yeah, go on.
I was going to say, doesn't the film also have like alternate endings?
It does. They're not...
Like the 28 Days. Cause it isn't like one where he's dead and they've like got a turkey instead, another one where they're like living with him.
Yeah, we'll get to that. That's a good point.
Yeah.
I probably would have forgot to mention that, but yeah. So obviously there's various themes in this. There's kind of humanity and so on, where it becomes more than just a zombie film, which is usually a good film. So like Day of the Dead and Dawn of the Dead and all the George Romero ones. It's not just about the zombies. It's about mankind's inhumanity towards itself, kind of thing. Or how that can be the case, but doesn't have to be the case. And usually with these movies, they're not nihilistic in that. They'll usually say that can happen, but it doesn't have to happen. And despite all that, there is still a humanity that is always going to be there. So there's a bit of positivity with these movies. And with this one, obviously, you've got the military, who really, if you kind of fall into the hands of these military guys, you'd probably rather be left to fend for yourself amongst the rage infected, because they're actually like way worse. They'll keep you alive while they're doing to you what you're trying to run away from. It's basically like a rape gang. They've set themselves up to kind of trick people into going to them for help, and then they're just going to basically take all the women and just rape them, basically.
Yeah, they're always like tricking people, like, hey, go fill this bottle up at the sink. And then when they do, like, bad things happen. Oh, wait, no, that's something else.
Oh, that was a Topher incident. That was something very separate. But yeah, so that's like a big part of this. One thing that we've not mentioned as well is the nature of them being zombies in inverted comma. That word's never used in this. Effectively, it is it is the genre of movie. It's a zombie film, but they're not typical undead, voodoo-inspired zombies. These are people.
Yeah, I mean, it's like a plot point that they are like alive.
Yeah, and they can starve to death in the first film. And it's basically a rage virus that's been tinkered with that just makes people go like absolutely crazy, and it can be passed on by being bitten by the infected. So it's like a super virus. And
of course, brought to us by animal activists, because fucking of course.
yeah, that's quite accurate. So we'll come to the end of the 28 days later thing, but like you mentioned, there's an alternate ending where if you've got the DVD or the Blu-ray, in the actual film, Jim, the Cillian Murphy character, survives, but in the alternate ending, he dies, like you say, and the ending is very similar otherwise. But I don't think that alternate ending was ever edited into a version of the film I got to see. I think it was just like a bonus feature on the discs. But it's one that does get talked about quite a bit.
Yeah, because I was doing like, it's been a little while since I've seen it, so I was like, which is actually the proper one? Like, so it's the one he lives that's the proper one.
Yeah, it's not like I Am Legend, where there's like two cuts of the film where you can watch a film where he actually lives at the end. It's just a deleted scene. I don't think it's ever been incorporated into any cut of the movie officially, anyway. Yeah, I mean, it's just a really creepy film. There's some like really just crazy scenes at the bit at the beginning where before he sees any animated zombies, when all he sees is just dead bodies basically, he goes into a church and there's a pile of dead bodies in there, and he just kind of calmly and quietly just says, "Hello." And when he does, like 2 or 3 of these zombies just kind of pop up, and they have this really like frenzied look on the face, where they're kind of staring at him, and it's like so creepy is that scene. And then obviously they start to chase him. But yeah. Any more thoughts on 28 Days Later before we move on to Weeks?
No, I think it's about all I had to.
Yeah, great film, really well directed. Danny Boyle, who did film Trainspotter and Shallow Grave, and a few others leading up to this. The score is really good. The soundtrack's really good as well. 28 Weeks Later came out 5 years later in 2007. It wasn't directed by Danny Boyle. I can't remember. He might have produced it or something, but I know Danny Boyle was directing a film called Sunshine instead, which is a really good film. We'll save that for another time. But 28 Weeks Later it's a bit more of an American movie, isn't it? I mean, it's got more of an American cast in it, and I think the American studios kind of got into it a little bit more. And
I mean, it even crosses over the Avengers because it's got fucking Hawkeye in it.
Yeah, well, it's got loads of people that went on to be quite big. Rose Byrne, she's been in loads of stuff. If I was just watching X-Men First Class yesterday, she was in that as well, and she's been in like horror films and so on as well. But yeah, Jeremy Renner, this is the first film I ever saw him in. Idris Elba was in it as well. You might have forgotten about that actually, that he's in this film. And Robert Carlyle, which is no surprise because he did work with Danny Boyle at least a couple of times before, maybe. He was in Trainspotting anyway. So in this
so the thing with Weeks is a lot of people have like, is this even canon with years? Because like basically the premise in Weeks is like they've started to repopulate London because like all the infected have starved to death at this point. It's like 28 weeks, like they can't live that long without food, and they'll have used up all the food by now.
Yeah, it's a good point, and I think that's worth mentioning in this, even though it kind of ties into the new one 28 years later. Because in this one, like the core was just saying there, it's effectively about 6 months later, which is mental. The infected have starved to death. We established in the first film that these people would still need to eat, and if they didn't, they would starve. And you even see that at the end of the first film. And that is what's happened. So they've reopened London, but it's a very small, cordoned off area, and presumably the scope was to keep expanding outwards and sanitising other areas until the rest of the city and then the country can be like repopulated. So families start to move back in, and there's two children, brother and sister, that were actually away on a school trip in France when everything kicked off. So they've come back to the UK, and the dad is played by Robert Carlyle, and he's kind of been living there for a little while and knows some of the area, and has like security clearance and so on, can open certain doors and so on. Now
it's like a janitor, if I remember correct.
Yeah. So there's a bit of a prelude to this, because basically Robert Carlyle's wife and he were in hiding shortly after the outbreak, and he basically escaped out of a window when the zombies were coming in and left his wife. So these two children, that's their mum, and you don't exactly see what happens to her, but you see her getting attacked and he's running away, and he's got survivor's guilt for that. And as it turns out, you think she's dead, but she's actually not. She has been bitten, but she hasn't been affected quite in the same way as everyone else. She's been bitten, and although
she's like an asymptomatic carrier. Like, she's got the disease, but she's not like fucked up by it.
Yeah, effectively, she's a little bit kind of affected, but she's seems
in one of her eyes like really like bloodshot and like weird.
Yeah, I think that's the sign of the genetic issue that she's got anyway. She's got like two different coloured eyes, and the son has that as well. So you kind of see where this is going. So then they find her and they bring her back, and she's like in a hospital, and they know she's infected, but they don't quite understand why she's not like dead or turned into a rage zombie. The dad sneaks in, overwhelmed, and then kisses her, but through kissing her, he gets infected, and that's when it all kicks off again. So it's a bit of a chase movie after that, because basically once everything kicks off and everybody starts to get infected, it breaks out. The American military that are watching over the thing, that are supposed to be protecting these people, then turn on them and then realise the only way to keep this in its tracks is to shoot everyone, even if they're not evidently infected. Just shoot them all. So it kind of becomes, again, it's another thing where it's not just the zombies, it's the authorities, it's the military that are the bad guys. Well, it depends who you are in the movie, but if you're just an average person on the street, the military are trying to kill you when you're not actually infected. And then they start to
to be perfectly honest, they were the villains fucking regardless, because the military fucking sucks in this.
Yeah.
It's like, if you had even semi-competent fucking security, none of this would have happened. Like, why the fuck were you moving people back in this soon? Like, what the fuck?
Yeah, exactly, yeah, no.
Like, it's a good movie, but yeah, the fucking military in this, like, you guys are seriously fucking incompetent. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah, no, that's a good point. So it kind of becomes a chase, because then you've got the Robert Carlyle character who's infected, and for some reason he's chasing after his two children. He wants to like kill them, but also the military chase
kill
after
them or infect them, like, which I would bring up because I might go back round to that in like 28 years later. But he's definitely after the kids for some reason.
Yeah. And at the end of the movie, they escape on a helicopter, and the dad has actually bitten the son as well at one point towards the end of the film. But again, like his mum, he's got genetic semi-immunity to the virus. And the two children escape via a helicopter across the channel to France, and then the last thing we see in the movie is rage infected running through the streets of Paris towards the Eiffel Tower. So the ending there was quite nihilistic. It was basically, this isn't contained to the UK anymore, it's now out in France, so the rest of Europe, unless they can lock it down, which works always so brilliantly, doesn't it? Will end up...
hey, like, if you got a rage infection, like, the best thing you can do is gather up all the uninfected survivors into one massive room and not even lock any fucking doors or have any guards on them.
Yeah.
So that, like, one fucking, like, rage zombie can get in there and infect everyone.
Yeah. Yeah, so you were going to bring something up, were you, just a moment ago, by the way? About...
Well, no, I mean, when we get on to 28 years later.
Alright. So, yes, that's basically those films. Obviously, 28 weeks later wasn't as well received as Days Later was. And it's not as good, but it's still decent. I would always watch the two together. It's not one of those where you kind of disregard it. There was some talk that it was going to be written out of continuity with the 28 Years Later movie that just came out, and I think there were some issues as well when it came to like the rights or something. I think it might have been similar to like how we have with the Evil Dead movies, and you've got Army of Darkness, where although it is a sequel and so on, there's some like rights issues with it. They're not owned by the same people or whatever. And that was part of the reason why they struggled to get 28 Years Later off the ground as well.
That's why we never got 28 months later, because it just got tied up for so long.
Yeah. But, yeah, two pretty good movies. The kind of distinction between the two is good, because you're not just rehashing what you did in the first one. Because it's always, especially with horror films, that's always a risk that you're just basically trying to recapture the same genie in a bottle that you had with the first one. We saw of films like Friday the 13th, where each film is just basically the same as the last. This one does actually break it's not even a mould, I suppose, it's only one film, but it just kind of separate itself from the first film. And I think as well, like I say, the larger budget and it being a bit more of an American production had something to do with that as well, and so on. So yeah, two pretty good movies. The second one's not quite as scary as the first one. Some say it's not even scary at all. It does have some pretty good bits in it, some fairly effective bits. It's quite well directed.
I mean, still after all this time, I remember, kind of like the scene where, like, he's really guilty and he kisses the wife, and, he starts turning and she's, like, freaking out because she's, like, strapped down so she can't, like, get away. Like, that was a fucking effective scene.
Yeah, it was kind of horrible to watch. Without being, like, sort of in a mean-spirited way. It wasn't, like, too gory, because I think it was, like, two characters that otherwise, like, really cared about each other as well. That's kind of the horror nature of it. It's not just one person kills another person. So, what was the other thing I was going to say about it? Oh, yeah, we'll mention in this, it does, again, tie into 28 Years Later, which we're going to talk about in the next video, which you'll see tomorrow. But it's worth mentioning this here. So, we know now that there's more movies that have... Well, there's a movie that's come out and another one on the way, that after this film, the virus just stays out there. They don't manage to ever contain it ever again. The nature of the virus seems to have changed, having gone specifically through this woman. Unless they kind of add more to the story, we'll just go off what we know. We know that the virus, that there were no more infected, that they'd all starved to death in the whole country, because they wouldn't have brought people back to London if there were like still zombies walking around anywhere else in the UK on the island. So
yeah, which it's honestly kind of where it falls down a bit, because it's like, well, okay, where are all these other survivors coming from then? It's like a whole village full of them in.
Yeah, it's true.
Which, like I say, is why I can see like some people say like, oh, it's a reboot, like you can ignore weeks. It's like, I kind of see that, but also like I say, every step of the way, this fucking operation to settle part of London was a complete shit show. So I 100% fucking believe there were like special infected off in the fucking woods and survivors like up north and stuff, and they just fucking never noticed.
Yeah,
they were incompetent enough. Let's be fucking honest.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, see, there is room for that, but there's nothing to say that 28 years later fundamentally cannot have happened, and there's plenty to say that it did happen. So this...
Yeah, because there's even like some of the like scenes that it cuts away to in like 28 years later are from like, it's like scenes from like the sniping, like when they're shooting like the rage zombies with the snipers and stuff. It's like that is from 28 weeks later, so
Yes, they're showing flashbacks to 28 weeks later.
Yeah.
Very quick, but they're there.
Which implies like it definitely happened.
Yeah, exactly. And it's worth mentioning on this video. So, like I say, the virus from this point on, nobody else is infected, but then it gets rebirthed through this woman who has a sort of semi-immunity to the virus. So it filters through her, and it's evolved because now it's been through somebody that it hasn't killed. So the virus has evolved and learned how to infect people without requiring them to starve to death, or whatever. And obviously in the sequel you've got a different types of zombies in this, infected in this, and they eat animals. They do actually eat to function, whereas the zombies that you saw in the first film, they didn't seem to have the capacity to do that. They wouldn't like go out and hunt animals, whereas you do see that. So the virus has evolved, and as far as I'm concerned, unless, like I say, unless there's something else gets introduced into in the next movie that contradicts this, the reason why we've now got the zombies we've got in 28 years later is because of this woman in 28 weeks later, because the virus went through her, but it didn't kill her and she didn't kill it. She didn't starve to death and then kill the virus along with itself. We see this with, I know this is something I mentioned before, like people who get like VD, venereal disease, basically, and they get put on penicillin, get me words right, penicillin, but they don't take the entire course of penicillin. They just take it until
it's like, oh, I'm feeling better. I don't need to take it anymore. Like, that's not how that works.
Yeah. And then they go out and sleep with other people, and although they're feeling better, the virus is actually not dead, and they pass it on. But this virus has now evolved because it knows how to be confronted by penicillin but not be killed. So you get these like super gonorrheas that I think we had a few years ago in like Leeds, near where we live. You never caught that, did you, Cara? I don't think. Not, but
but
no.
Like the skeleton.
I didn't get it. Don't blame me. But yeah, so these super gonorrheas that are going around that are immune to penicillin because other people before that had the virus took it, but not enough to kill it. So it's evolved. It's like I say, as far as I'm concerned, my theory is, I'm fairly like happy with it, is that this virus went through this specific woman, and then another breakout happened, and after that, all the infected were then able to kind of function a little bit better without having to starve to death. Which takes us into 20 years later. Are you happy to end this there?
Yeah, pretty much. Like I say, there obviously has to have been other survivors in England, like in the period of this film, because like I said, like they've clearly been on like Lindy's farm in like 28 years later for quite a while. Like that's not just like, oh, with some random Europeans who for some reason decided to live in like the nightmare that is England. Like,
yeah,
they've clearly been living there since the like outbreak started.
You're definitely right, because it does say on the thing established 2002, which is when the outbreak happened. So you're definitely right there.
But yeah, we can move on to 2 years later.
So we'll leave it there. So check us back out again tomorrow on the channel, and we're going to be doing a review of 28 years later. And then every night leading up to Halloween, there's going to be another video where we're going to be talking about other horror films and so on. So yeah, we'll leave it there for now. That's it. Thank you very much for watching. So check back every night this week. We're going to have different videos, but tomorrow we're going to be talking about 28 years later.